Deadeye activated. Hey folks, Dave here, and we are diving into the new Hell Let Loose update with Max here from the team.
Hi there, I'm, as Dave said, I'm Max Rea, the lead dev on Hell Let Loose. I'll be taking a look at some of the iconic locations in our two new Eastern Front maps, and talking about some of the history behind the locations and some of the details and the aspects of developing Hell Let Loose itself.
This is exciting. This looks cool.
Yeah, this is one of our two Eastern Front maps, Kursk, and named after the famous battle, which was kind of Soviets versus the Germans, and yeah, really another big, what ended up as being a big German defeat, particularly with the use of armor. The T-34 tanks really kind of changed the game for the Soviets, and so we've got a couple of T-34s in each map, and obviously the commander can kind of call in more of them. But as you can see here, basically the map is quite an unusual map for us, you know, alongside all our other maps. This one is really wide open compared to Stalingrad. Focus a lot on vehicle gameplay. And for the infantry, we basically have trench systems that kind of move all the way across the fields, and so the infantry tend to fight a really close quarters game in the trenches, while the armor units duke it out above, which is kind of cool. It's kind of a cool dynamic watching the rounds fly overhead and the tanks dueling each other while you're in a trench clearing down here in the muck.
Yeah, this is atmospheric right here. I think your particle effect artist needs a pay raise. Those smoke plumes are on point. I'm there.
I know. Yeah, they've done a fantastic job on it, and really trying to pull them down and optimize them, because the real Battle of Kursk kind of had all of these destroyed wrecks all over it, and so we couldn't kind of show this battle without having a whole bunch of fire and smoke and destroyed vehicles and yeah, all the rest of it. So no, they did a fantastic job on that. And obviously in Hell Let Loose we have sort of almost like a randomized capture layout each time with every game. And so we've tried to, even though the map is ostensibly like a big field, we've tried to work quite hard to create a different, play style for each of the strong points, which is obviously what we kind of call the capture. Yeah. The capture sectors, the capture points.
I'm looking at the overview map here, and I see that trench system that you were talking about. That is extensive.
It certainly is. It certainly is. It's quite funny. You have these really dramatic moments where, for instance, the whole enemy team will be in here, kind of defending, and then there'll be a trench network just to our south there, and one guy or someone might manage to sneak up through the grass or whatever, drop in behind, and then absolutely cause carnage. So it's a really fun map where you'll be focused either on like duking it out, sometimes with melee weapons, and then having people drop in on you, or also tanks rolling over the top of the trenches is cool as well. Yeah,
dramatic. So I love it.
Yeah, it's a fun map. It's definitely again like a quite an unusual map, and a lot of it revolves around the armored gameplay. You do need your vehicles to be on point in this map to make sure that it protects your infantry as you move up.
Now, I notice I have my Nagant revolver here, and I'm excited because I actually own one of these personally in real life, and it has one of the most hilariously heavy double action trigger pulls of any pistol I've ever fired. So I want to try it out here in game and see what it's like.
Yeah, give it a go. The optic is brutal.
The little tiny notch.
The sight post is just. We tried to figure out, what we would do with that, because it is it's a very iconic gun, but it's also, let's just say if you were going to give me a Tokarev or the Nagant revolver, I think I know which one I'd choose, and it wouldn't be the Nagant.
I love the reload animation too. That is on point. I tried a speed drill with mine, and
Mm.
I think my best time was like 48 seconds for a full reload because some of the shells get stuck sometimes, and you're just frantically trying to ramrod them out under pressure.
I can't even imagine having to do that in a trench with enemies.
This had to have been honestly a really terrifying weapon to be issued because of that. Like those
Oh
7
my
rounds
goodness.
are it basically. You're not gonna be able to count on that reload.
No, no, not at all. I mean, yeah, between the we were really trying to figure it out because obviously with a kind of hardcore game like this,
Yeah.
What's going to stop people wanting to just always take the Tokarev versus the Nagant? You know, good old almost like it's like almost a Colt 1911. The Tokarev feels like. Why would people play with the Nagant? But I think that it's kind of for me, it's definitely about the style points.
Absolutely.
And also the idea that you're kind of challenging yourself with this, like, let's just say suboptimal piece of weaponry.
Yeah, it feels like the officer's correct choice here.
Yeah, exactly. It is style points. I do love a revolver. I think there's something like evocative about it. You know, it's definitely a historical weapon. And then obviously, you know, we've got the PPSH.
Yeah.
You really do get a sense very quickly of like why it was such a monster at close combat. The fire rate and the spray is just immense.
I'm gonna try it out here in the house. I missed my opportunity back in the trench, but
Or maybe go for that tank over there. Aim for that shell. That T-34 just over sky 145 degrees.
ooh, that fire rate. Speaking of style points, the animations are beautiful, absolutely beautiful.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, the animation team. I think we feel like, you know, now that we're coming out of early access, I think the guns feel sort of appropriately weighty, and then we're able to also iterate them and introduce guns far quicker than we've ever been able to before in the past. And it's really shone in so much as us integrating kind of the Russian content. And then obviously you there have got a stick, PPSH.
Yeah.
With the stick, some of the decisions that we made with it were to reduce the ADS time, reduce the time in which it took to bring it up to your face, and then it does have a slightly higher vertical recoil just because it doesn't have that heavy drum mag weighing it down.
Yeah.
Whereas the drum mag variant that we also have in the game is obviously a monster just by sheer rate of fire. It almost feels like a little mini MG42 being aimed at you. It's less controllable after a while as well. Like the longer you kind of fire it, we've kind of tweaked it a bit so that it is harder to kind of keep really long, accurate bursts on, you know, on target.
I really appreciate those small bits of attention to detail for your ballistics here in Hell Let Loose, because the weapons are authentic, first of all, and they feel realistic, but they're easy to pick up and hard to master. And even for new players, you can get those lucky headshots that are just so super satisfying. That little ping of the helmet, it's glorious.
Yeah, that little ding has become really became something much bigger than what we thought it would be, just in letting players know, yeah, there is just that extra satisfaction in it. Yeah, that little sound. Obviously, watching the helmet pop off is also quite satisfying. And obviously, you know, the rest of the inventory is kind of what you would expect. All of it's been, you know, researched to death.
Yeah.
We've got like your little stopwatch was produced.
I love it.
Where the factory was. Yeah, it's crazy.
So do you have a member or members of your team that are specifically just doing the research for the authenticity and the details like that?
Yeah, we have no specific person, in so much as no one that it's their full-time job. But what we often do is we're fortunate that, for instance, for the Soviet forces, we've got Russian team members, and we also have. I mean, part of the team is just that we're so passionate about the history, and so a lot of the time the artists will spend a lot of time researching, and then we'll run stuff by a lot of the time the reenactor communities, both in Russia and in the West, and you know, the States and Europe, and in Russia. And basically narrow down exactly what it is we should be using. I can guarantee 100% that every item and every ammo box and every even supply boxes, the stopwatches that you use, all of it, if you were to Google it, is the stuff that you would have seen on the battlefield back in the day.
That's really cool that it's your whole team working together for the authenticity and the research. Gets everybody involved on their little piece of the game.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it is annoying, I have to say, in so much as like we'll discover something and then someone will look at it and say, "Oh, I read an article that this factory actually closed before the war, so this wouldn't have been one, in this particular battle," and all that sort of thing. But all of that adds to kind of, I think, the authenticity of the experience, and we often, we'll have to double back and go, "Oh no, that actually didn't happen," or you learn really surprising facts as well that aren't completely clear to you when you sort of start. I think still to this day, one of the most interesting things I've learned is that I think there was maybe only one recorded instance of the U.S. Army, the U.S. forces coming up against a Tiger tank.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, which is extremely surprising to me, obviously. I mean, we've all seen Fury.
Oh, yeah.
But I think, you would think that was kind of what the normal battle would be, the Tiger tanks versus the Shermans. When in actual fact, a lot of the Tigers were faced by obviously the Soviets at this battle, at the Battle of Kursk. I think there was the largest number of ever fielded Tiger tanks. And then also against the Brits in Normandy as well, just who were stationed to the north, and a particular Tiger unit was kind of doing battle with them, whereas the US forces were fighting different forces, more airborne kind of units. So interesting stuff like that always kind of pops up, and to always do your best and try and keep pushing forward in the right direction in terms of the historical reality of things.
It sounds like you guys have I'll call it a feature that I've talked to a lot of indie devs about who are working on their early access historical shooters, where your community is definitely there to back up your research and provide those little nuggets that you might have missed otherwise.
Oh my goodness, yeah, exactly. I mean, I think like whenever you sort of try and touch on anything real, and and I think the same can be said for driving games, but strategy games, for any kind of any game that tries to make a claim on historicity, yeah, you definitely attract a community who are obviously super passionate about making sure that as much of the accuracy is preserved as humanly possible. And obviously our community is no different. We try and work with them as much as possible to make sure that we're doing kind of the historically accurate thing, and sometimes we'll mess up, but yeah, you're always just trying to, it's one of the most challenging aspects, I think, of developing this kind of game, finding that sweet spot between fun and historically accurate.
Yeah, I think you're definitely not alone in that. That seems to be one of the biggest challenges for making historic games. It's just the authenticity / realism balance with the fun factor, and that's one of the things that I really love about Hell Let Loose is it's approachable, but it has just the right amount of realism, the icing on the cake, if you will, that it plays so well while feeling so authentic. It's fantastic. A perfect balance, I think.
Oh, thanks very much. I really appreciate that. It's definitely been a balance that we as developers are always trying to find, and always trying to kind of think very carefully about, if we're to make something too simple, then we kind of lose the heart of it. We lose your expectation of it. I think like the artillery is kind of a good example, and maybe the vehicles as well, where we have geared vehicles and one person's the driver the whole time, but trying to make that still fun to play, especially when you're playing with a friend, and making that a really pure kind of teamwork focused experience. And obviously, as everyone has different tastes when it comes to that stuff.
Sure,
Some
yeah.
some people, prefer something a little bit faster. Some people think Hell Let Loose is way too fast.
I've seen that too.
Nowhere near slow enough. Yeah. So it is, I think it's just a great time to be a gamer, really, where there are so many different games to kind of cater to your particular taste. People kind of go for their particular role, and then they'll normally play that role almost the whole time in game. And it's something really interesting about the game that we've found, where particularly when we're receiving feedback. You'll get feedback and you'll say, okay, well, what do you do in the game that's caused you to give this feedback, positive or negative? And you just realize that there are some people, yeah, who simultaneously who have never stepped foot outside a vehicle. They've never been an infantryman. And so that will, that kind of colors their whole experience of the game. So, yeah, it is a funny one. It's also quite tough for us as devs, obviously, because in many games, the experience the players have is generally tends to be quite focused. In so much as, you're only playing with guns. Just having the 14 different roles, all the vehicles, all of this stuff all happening simultaneously is definitely the biggest challenge with the game.
And I would guess too, if you've got parts of your player base here in early access that are really stuck on their favorite role, as you're making some sometimes sweeping balance and changes and tweaks as part of just the development process, I'm sure you get some pretty intense feedback after some of those changes.
Oh, definitely. I mean, I think also, it's hard to separate like what is Hell Let Loose specific and then what is just players who are passionate about a game wanting to voice their opinion. We've often thought about it, and I think it'd be far worse to have no one want to give any feedback at all because no one was engaged or playing than
Yeah.
than obviously receiving kind of too much feedback. But definitely, I think at the top end of the hours played, we've got people who have something just near 5,000 hours in the game. So
That's
we're
some
very
value
aware.
for the purchase price right there.
Oh yeah. It's just awesome though that that someone wants to engage with what we're doing for that long, and that it's become kind of their focus, or at least the main game that they play. And so yeah, but as you know, we always have to make sure that we kind of keep the game moving and it doesn't become stale, and we achieve our goals with regard to bring in new features and new maps and new weapons. And trying to fix issues that we feel are in the game, while also not, making older veteran players feel like we've changed the game so radically that there's nothing left here for them.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's been one of our biggest challenges, I'd say, throughout our early access period, is managing that right.
I'm just distracted over here. I saw this really cool trench system that one of your level artists made out of this muddy farm field where they've just bulldozed the mud and built these fortifications. It just looks really natural.
Oh yeah. So there's a little bit of a historical background to these. So
Yeah.
essentially, these locations were quite shallow. So as you can see, they kind of cover the bottom half of your body. It's a good fighting position from the crouch position. But what actually happened is the Russians built anti-tank guns here, and then the Germans sort of matched them. And the whole idea was that they called it the defense in depth, and so the traditional idea that you saw at the kind of the start of World War II was that you would have a line, and then when the enemy smashed through that line, like in the Ardennes, the Germans against the French right at the beginning of the war, once the enemy smashed through it, there wasn't much you could do. You were kind of screwed. All the panzers, all the tanks would basically drive past you. And so what the Russians did was something called the defense in depth, which meant that they basically had lots of positions like this, with anti-tank guns, and when the Germans would drive in, they would sort of drive around these positions, which would be knocking out many of their tanks, and then these positions would retreat, and then they would be a position like this, maybe a kilometer or 2 kilometers back, that would then do the same. And so even if they'd passed kind of the first line of defense, they hadn't broken through to encircle the army, they were then getting hit by the next row of anti-tank guns. So we thought that was something really cool to kind of represent, and we also thought, it's great cover for infantry, great spot to drop a spawn point, an OP or a garrison, and also just gives you some cover as an infantryman from all the armor. So yeah, this is kind of a little bit of a story behind this.
That is awesome.
The idea of this defense in depth. Yeah, so we just got some shell casings that the would have been distributed by them. So we have seen players actually park tanks in here as well, going to hold down position, and then also build anti-tank guns here. So we're always kind of trying to tell a story really with each little bit of map that we create.
I really appreciate this, the visual storytelling there, because I was just jogging by and immediately just that slip of the farm field down into the half-built fortifications. It makes you want to stop and appreciate the details as you're just going by.
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny. It's one of those things that you can appreciate in a situation like this. And then when you're playing the game, you're just like, everything kind of blurs together, and you're
Yeah,
just like, how do I get to that cover? How do I get over there? So it's nice to kind of stop and slow down and have a look around.
absolutely.
This is the German line, the village near the German line. And this is the location in real life, obviously based on a specific location in real life. And the idea here is we've kind of got obviously the German supplies tucked in behind the houses. Some kind of, I mean, the villagers tended to abandon the buildings within the within the battle itself. But trying to, yeah, like I said, trying to tell that story of this settlement. And obviously it's good fun to fight through.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I wanted to ask too about that process for your map development, because I mean all of your maps are of course based on real battles and real locations, but when you guys set out to make a new map, what's that first step? Do you guys start with actual satellite and height map data for your map creation, and then scale it to the size of the game?
Yeah, we do. So we basically will choose a location, we'll find where the battle took place, and then we'll choose a location within that battle space. And then we try and we fiddle with it a lot to try and make sure we're capturing as much different points of interest within our sort of sector system as we possibly can. And sometimes, like for instance, this map's a good example of it. Sometimes there just simply isn't much there.
Right.
You know, we know that on the day there were lots and lots of trenches, but oftentimes there just isn't,
It's farm
anything
fields.
there. So we kind of, literally just a cornfield, and it's it's not super fun to just be lying down on flat ground the whole time. So
Yeah.
we kind of start with that. We import height data into the engine to give us our landscape, the first steps of our landscape anyway. And then essentially from there, we then go through a really big mapping process, which we're doing at the minute for 2 of our new maps that are in progress. And then what we do is, we'll move out of the strong point or else.
Oh, yep.
We'll essentially kind of lay the map out even before we begin work on it. Normally lay out all the infrastructure, all of the kind of interesting stuff that's that we want to include in the map. We kind of gather some reference images about the types of different locations that we want to include. So we might want to include a factory in one area, a bridge in another area, and figure that out. And then we start actually mapping and level designing, and normally it takes about 3 to 6 months depending on the map, but normally near the 6-month period to properly finish a map. It's an enormous process. Really is a huge process.
That's an impressive time frame, though. I was looking at some of the details back there with, just some of those small little ditches next to the road that gives the infantry just that tiny bit of cover, but also fulfills that realistic purpose of, roads have ditches.
That's kind of the unsung hero of Hell Let Loose, is just our level design team, Gritson and Andrew, are just phenomenal artists, and they think very carefully about this stuff, about how we can achieve the best kind of most authentic look possible. We don't want any real repetition in the map. We don't want you to kind of be like, oh, this is the same as this is the same as this. And then obviously just how you as a player interact with each location is obviously key to us and what we think about. And a lot of the time what we'll do is we'll sort of look at it and play it internally, and we have a couple of rules that we try and abide by. We always try and make sure that we've got a good level of cover density between the different strong points, because obviously having absolutely zero cover or zero room to maneuver makes for a very kind of unfun game. Being that sweet spot so that you have enough cover to move, but you also don't have so much cover that it feels like you never know where the enemy's firing from.
Oh yeah.
That's the real fine line to figure out. Cool. Let's head up.
Oh wow,
here.
that view of the river, that is dramatic.
Yeah, the
Oh
Volga
man,
River. Yeah, this is kind of our enemy at the gates location. I don't know if you remember seeing
absolutely,
that
yeah.
movie, but this is actually, I dare say, our Volga Banks is almost more accurate than the movie, to be honest. And we really researched this to death. And we've even got sort of the Russian craft in the river that were there on the day. And then in the distance, past the across the other side is the sort of eastern bank of Stalingrad. And then obviously this is the place where the first time really ever that the Germans were beaten.
Yeah.
It was the first time really that they'd had to come to a hard stop and couldn't just keep pushing. So yeah, it's quite a special battle for us. Obviously, it's extremely iconic, and just the fact that it just had such a huge weight within the war itself. You know, a lot of the Western Front that we have in the game is fantastic and it's dramatic, but really the first time the Germans came to a halt was here at Stalingrad in this exact location as well, just above the river.
Honestly, though, this kind of virtual tourism stuff in historic-based games is right up my alley. And the level of detail that you guys put into it is something that I appreciate. I mean, the fact that you can say, we're standing here on the map, and this is actually where this historic thing happened, that's wild.
I find it extremely interesting as well. So normally I'm like telling people, please stop me if I'm boring.
No, please
But
carry
no,
on.
this is it. Well, no, this is really like what's kind of so amazing. Obviously, our street layout, all the buildings are in the right place. You know, we have just up here, over here, we've got a building called Grudinen's Steam Mill. You can see this if you Google it, you'll see this exact mill, same layout, same number of floors, same look, same appearance. It's a real location, and this was a headquarters for the Soviets in this part of the city. And yeah, it's quite an amazing spot because the Soviets never lost this building, and as a result, this is, as you can see here, this is a strong point. So the opportunity to attack Grudinen's mill, and it's a really interesting map because obviously in Hell Let Loose we tend to do kind of countryside and that sort of thing, whereas here in Stalingrad you really do have you know, close quarters CQB fighting for the mill, lots of room to room fighting and room to room clearing, which is yeah, it's a different style of gameplay for the game. And then here we have these white garages, and these were also here in real. I mean, everything is here in real life.
Oh,
but
yeah.
basically the Russians would essentially run from this building up here into the garages, and they sort of entrenched the garages as well later on in the war. And then they would run out here and into this trench here, and then into the basement just in front of us here at Pavlov's house. And this building in front of us here is still there in real life, and it's called Pavlov's house. It's probably one of the most famous buildings in Stalingrad, to the west anyway.
Yeah.
And the reason it's so amazing or interesting is because 40 Russians are a rotating mixture of around about 40 Russian soldiers, with civilians still living in the basement because they weren't able to escape, use this building to hold this entire square here. And this entire square here is called January 9th Square. And January 9th marks kind of the Soviet uprising, the communist revolution. And the Soviets bulldozed what was here. Some of your audience may know the map Tsaritsyn from Battlefield 1.
Oh, yeah.
And Tsaritsyn Cathedral used to stand where we are right now.
Oh, wow. Okay, yeah.
So the Soviets, basically in an attempt to remove sort of Russian Orthodox religion, and they renamed the city of Tsaritsyn. Obviously, it's got Tsar in the title, which was a bit of a no-no in Soviet Russia. And so it ended up being renamed Stalingrad for kind of propaganda purposes. And then it's ended up as Volgograd. But it's quite amazing because, yeah, Tsaritsyn Cathedral used to stand right here. And Dom Pavlova, the Pavlov's house, just this building here, had 40 defenders in it, and they basically, using that building, could command a view, as you can see here, of basically all the surrounding landscape. The Germans bombed the city of Stalingrad for about, I think it's about, I'm going to get this wrong, but I think about 2 weeks before they even entered it. And they used Stukas largely to bomb the entire city. It burned much of it to the ground because a lot of it was wood. And really the only surviving buildings are kind of the ones you see here, which are sort of industrial buildings, the new kind of concrete and brick Soviet apartment building. If you look at photos of the city, they turned it into Mars. Like, they turned it into the surface of Mars. It's the amount of rubble in the city. There was no way of telling like what was there previously in many of the locations, and it just showered debris absolutely everywhere as well. So really, obviously for us, a big challenge to recreate this, a big challenge to also offer players cover in what is basically an absolutely bombed shell. And this building here obviously still has like tactical some importance, this Pavlov's house, because within the game it's a strong point, and if you hold that building effectively, you can hold it much like the Russians did, historically. It's a really strong fortified location. Can you see this ping that I'm putting down?
Oh, yep, there it is.
So the German army really never got further than about there, and that is where they stopped in Russia. That corner up there is where they really never passed. They took Pavlov's house for about a week, but they never got to Grudinen's mill. And their angle of attack was from the Voyentorg, which was a school and an apartment building, which is this building we're standing in here. This rubble, this building we're standing in here was where they basically would begin to attack the square from. They'd start up here in this rubble, and they move down and around in an attempt to basically attack Pavlov's house over there. And they flooded around it on the other side as well, and tried to get to a building way over here, which we can go and visit later, called the L-shaped house. It's very imaginative, and it is a really strong Russian position on that marker over there. And then you have Pavlov's house here, which was an incredibly strong Russian position. And then finally, over here, you kind of have the brewery building just over there. And then you have another headquarters just here, which kind of functioned as a headquarters for the brewery. And really, yeah, I mean, it's a very nerdy thing to say, but it really is quite amazing, because this is where you could really argue this is where the tide turned for the Germans.
Mm-hmm, yep.
in this literal 500-meter stretch. This is where they didn't get further than this. No German managed to cross the river up ahead of us. Yeah, and so it's, for us as people who love the game and love history, we just feel that it's important, to make sure that we're kind of getting as many of these details kind of correct as we can.
Well, Max, I hope you realize that you're crushing Russia's tourism industry here with this level of detail and accuracy in your game. It's just, why buy plane tickets when you can just hop in and explore, right?
Oh, well, I mean, the sad thing was, actually, in researching this, I really wanted to take the team to Volgograd, but which is obviously Stalingrad's new name. But obviously because of COVID, we couldn't, so we kind of had to do the next best thing, which was spend about 100 hours looking at aerial photographs and and Google Street View. But yeah, no, it's definitely been kind of a fun task, and also an extremely daunting task.
Absolutely.
Yeah, when you think about it. And I have to say, I have some criticism for Soviet city planning. Some of the decisions were quite strange. Just popping in a building in a location, destroying a cathedral is never, I think, a good feeling. And then replacing it with kind of 2 apartment buildings and a bit of a shame. But
that's a criticism that I have of a lot of American cities too. Our history is much shorter, but American cities have a history of being done with the utility of a historic building and then immediately just bulldozing it for the next thing with zero care.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
Oh gosh.
Old train stations, old battlefield sites tend to. It's gotten better, recently, but 50, 60 years ago, it was bulldoze it and build the next new thing.
Oh gosh, yeah, no, I can. Yeah, what a shame, really. A
Yeah,
massive shame.
truly.
Yeah, no, the more preservation, the better. I was just going to quickly mention as well. Just another kind of final nerdy point.
Oh,
This
yes.
this type of building here in front of us here has and this wall as well has sort of ornate brickwork, and that's kind of it depends on the brickwork, but often that's how you know it's not really a Soviet structure.
Yeah.
A lot of the time, the Soviet structures tended to look a bit more like this one here, utilitarian. And so it's kind of an interesting mixture of architectures, Stalingrad. I was just going to say as well, Dave, do you want to just hit your M button and we'll call in a Katyusha strike in the square here.
I'll do it right in the center.
Here we go. So you'll hear the Stalin's organs, giant, I think 36 barrel rocket launcher. You can hear this very iconic sound of it as it comes in. We have a little bit of a delay, obviously, so that it's not uber powerful, but here it comes.
Ooh.
This is a pretty good way of clearing house.
Wow, the scale.
We've got all 36 rockets striking target.
There's that research and authenticity again.
And just trying to figure out how we do this. I mean, the crazy thing is, in real life, sometimes like 100 of the trucks.
Amazing.
You can't even imagine how many of those. But we thought that was like a really a great way for the commander to be able to turn the tide of battle with a big area attack. And so obviously, like everything in Hell Let Loose, it costs resources. So that there's a limit on it, and we've obviously got the cooldown as well.
Well, Max, I don't want to keep you, but this has been a blast. I feel like I cannot wait until tomorrow now to actually play a full-scale battle on these maps. This is incredible.
Oh, thanks, Dave. Thanks so much for jumping in. I mean, I'm excited to hop in tomorrow as well. I'll be in there playing as well, yeah, just thanks for your time. Thanks for jumping in, and yeah, thanks for the great questions as well.